I'm Stacy LeBaron, and this is another edition of Chelsea Hubcats. Today, Sherry Gustafson of the Mass Animal Fund is joining us, and we also have our regular guest and partner on the show, Laura Appleton, joining us. She's a Hubcats Chelsea outreach volunteer. Chelsea Hubcats is a nonprofit organization that was founded about a year and a half ago to focus on the needs of cats within the city. We assist with free spay-neuter programs, vaccination, and microchipping clinics, and rescue for cats and dogs. For more information about our organization, you can go to www.hubcatschelsea.com or find us on Facebook and join the team and make a difference for cats and dogs in the city of Chelsea. Our phone number is 857-776-2287, and our email is hubcatschelsea@gmail.com. On today's show, we would like to focus on plants and pets. Thus, I want to say thank you to Sherry for all these beautiful plants that we have here today. And many of us have indoor plants or are given plants and flowers, and many of our cats tend to want to eat them. I know mine have over the years. And we also have outdoor plant considerations. Sherry attends our Hubcats Chelsea committee meetings. She's an active volunteer. You may see her at some of our vaccination and microchipping clinics. And as I mentioned earlier, she also runs the Mass Animal Fund. So before we dive into plants, Sherry, welcome to the show. And
Thank you.
I just was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the Mass Animal Fund, and then we'll get right into those plants.
Sure. So the Mass Animal Fund was started back in 2012. So it was started by a law that created the fund. And basically it was designed to help animal control officers serve their community the best they could. So the way that we do that is really through two goals. The first one is to give animal control officers the resources to help people in their community. So we give free vouchers for spay-neuter vaccinations. And the second is provide free training for the ACOs across the state. Really, the Mass Animal Fund is completely funded by people who donate on their tax form in Massachusetts. So line 33F is where you can donate to the Mass Animal Fund to help those animal control officers in the communities they serve.
And the animal control officer here is Officer Texiera.
Yep.
And he also attends our meetings, and so you should feel free to reach out to him. We've had him on our show before, and folks should really feel comfortable in reaching out to him and asking him about more details with regards to those vouchers. We also, though, do support free spay-neuter for cats and dogs through the grant that we have, but of course grants don't last forever, and we do hope that the vouchers will last forever.
Yeah, and the vouchers, I mean, they're really a statewide program, so Hubcats is doing amazing things here in Chelsea. Voucher program kind of fills in the gaps where there's not necessarily grant money or other resources available.
And for folks that might not be Chelsea residents too, I would stress that it's very important for you to reach out to your animal control officer. Say you are in Everett, or you are a Revere resident, or from any community outside of this area, feel free to reach out to your animal control officer as long as you're in Massachusetts. Wouldn't it be great if folks saw this show beyond Massachusetts? Yep. But you know, if you are in a surrounding town in Massachusetts, those vouchers are available, and folks should be aware of that opportunity. And so I was just wondering, and Laura, I don't know if you have plants in your house with your cats, but I've pretty much banished plants.
Very few, very few.
Yeah. Are there like situations that, or what are your thoughts with regards to plants and cats, especially with our indoor cats? Do we give up on it? How do we handle it, and how do we handle situations when people give us plants? I've had people give me plants,
Absolutely.
and I can't use them.
I would like to back up a bit, but talk about the need for plants in general in the house, because cats are not permitted outside, you know. So if you have an outside cat or outside cat, the cat may be getting the greens it desires. Yeah. So it's a balance. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you can definitely have plants with cats and dogs and animals in general. I think you just have to be really cautious about what you bring into your house. You have to remember, indoor cats any new thing coming into their environment, they're going to be naturally curious about. So even if it's not something that they might nibble on, if they were indoor, outdoor, or going outside, when you bring something new into their environment, they're going to be curious. And a lot of times that's when you get them kind of going after the plants. So make sure when you're bringing in plants that they are ones that are safe. If they are taking that little nibble or playing with it, it's not something that you really have to be concerned about.
But you know, Sherry, if you comfortable addressing this question, the need for greens, I have a little to no greens in my house. If I remember, I buy cat grass or catnip. But you know, I have no plants to speak of. But if I get my cat loose in the outdoors in the backyard, she goes for the grass immediately.
Yep. Yeah, again, it's something that while they don't necessarily need it in their diet, it can help them. It can help with their digestive tract. One thing to keep in mind, if your cat has never had cat grass or has never had any plants that they are able to nibble on, you do want to always start slow too. So even plants that are non-toxic to a cat can potentially cause GI upset. So what I always recommend, if someone's never had plants in the house and they're looking to start to integrate them, the one thing you don't want to do is bring any plant home and just let your cat just really start to eat it. So what I recommend is, especially if you're trying to incorporate cat grass inside, is bring it out for just short periods of time each day when you're there to monitor until you really know that they're not just going to try to sit there and devour the whole plant all at once. Because too much of anything can really upset their GI tract.
So, in my cat in particular, I'm thinking if she is around the corner because I let her out in the backyard, I leash her. But I'm telling her, you don't need this. she goes for it, and I'm like, you don't need this. But okay.
So the types of plants that are out there, like, are there specific plants that we talked about? Cat grass. My cats have personally devoured spider plants like crazy. Are there other plants that we've seen that are okay, and then there are others that you would just say, oh, stay away from totally?
Absolutely. I would always recommend when you're going to a garden center and looking for plants to bring home into a household that has pets, just keep on your smartphone or keep a list handy. And we do have lists available on our Mass Animal website of non-toxic plants for both cats and dogs. But what you want to do is any plant that you're considering bringing home is you want to look up both the common name, which is going to be the first name on their tag, and the scientific name. And that's really, really important. So there's lots of plants where the common name overlaps to many different species. So one good example of that is the lilies. So some lilies can be very dangerous to have around cats and can really be toxic to bring into your household. So I would recommend avoiding them altogether. However, there are some plants that use the common name of lily, like Peruvian lily, that is often found in mixed bouquets. And that one's actually deemed non-toxic by the ASPCA. So it's really important to look up, again, not only that common name, but the common name and the scientific name to see if it's one that's safe.
I know my own personal experience around having plants. I was given some geraniums, and one of my cats who spent much of her life eating a ficus tree and had no problems eating the ficus tree, she ate the geranium, and it really made her quite ill. And I think compromised her kidneys for the rest of her life, actually. And I will never, ever have that happen again. Lesson learned, and it was very unfortunate. So we have to be careful because it only takes once.
Yeah.
Permanent kidney damage.
Yes, after that, she was never the same.
Yeah, and there's some plants, like the Easter lily, for example, where, all parts of the plant are highly toxic to cats. So that one, even if they just brush up against the plant, not necessarily try to chew on it, they can get the pollen on them and then lick it off, and that could really pose a hazard to the cat. So in those cases, again, always check to make sure it is a plant that you're bringing into the house that is non-toxic to your animals. And if it is on the toxic list, I would recommend putting it outside, putting it in a room where they really don't have any access, where a door can't be left open, things like that. If you really have to have that plant in the house, look at different solutions like putting them inside terrariums or putting them in enclosed areas. I've seen, some people use bird cages, old bird cages, and they really can enclose the plants, especially those old, big macaw cages. You can almost have an indoor garden inside that cage that your cat can't access. So again, I wouldn't recommend having any toxic plants in there, but if your cat is one that really chews at plants and you're worried about them digging, getting at the soil, knocking the plants over, think of those alternative ways to keep plants, like those big bird cages, terrariums, old aquariums with screen tops are another great option as well.
So you identify based on the terrarium and the plants on the show which are toxic and not?
So everything I brought with me today are examples of non-toxic plants, except for one, and we'll go over that a little bit later. Yeah. The one thing I think to remember, even before we start kind of diving into what plants are toxic and what aren't, is whenever you're doing indoor gardening, especially with cats, you really have to look at the container you're putting the plant in. So plants are curious, and not only are the plants a potential hazard to the cats, but what you're putting them in can be, and the soil, what's in the soil as well. So when you're first even thinking of having a garden, what I recommend is finding really heavy pots. I like the pots where there's no drainage at the bottom. So this is an example right here, this one, of a self-watering pot. So you can see this pot actually has a grid at the bottom. So you can actually fill that up with water before you put your plant in there. The water will go up through the soil and keep the plant hydrated. But the nice thing about this is there's no water that goes around the lip at the bottom. And if there's any type of chemicals or fertilizers in your soil, it's not going to drain out, because that water that pools around the plants is also a hazard to a lot of cats too, if you're not getting organic fertilizers, things like that. So that's something to keep in mind.
Wow, I would never have thought of that. I'm going to have to go home, and I have 2 Christmas cactuses. That's about my plant quota, and the cats don't seem to bother the cactuses. So, but they do have drainage out and around the edge, so I have to be careful about that.
So if you've never put chemicals in your plant, or the one thing to keep in mind, another thing when you're bringing home plants, even if you're bringing home a plant that's non-toxic, a lot of garden centers, they do spray the plants that are at the garden center. Or they put fertilizers in the soil. So what I always do before even bringing any plant into the house is rinse it off outside. So really give it a good wash before you bring it in. So if there is anything they're dusting their plants at the garden center, you're not bringing those chemicals on the plant inside as well.
One question that I used to get, so many times when I was answering the phone at the shelter around the holidays, around Christmas time, rhododendrons.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean,
poinsettias.
Poinsettias, sorry. Thank you, Laura. Rhododendrons are outside.
Yep.
So that's my summer, I've got summer gardening on my mind. Poinsettias, yes.
So poinsettias are one, if you go again to that ASPCA Poison Control Center website, you can basically on that website search any plant by scientific and common name. And poinsettias are one that is listed as toxic. However, if you look into it a little bit more, they're very low toxicity. So while a lot of people really get concerned about poinsettias, an animal would have to eat quite a bit of a poinsettia to really have severe effects. That being said, I wouldn't bring one in to the household. It's better safe than sorry. But if you do happen to have someone bring one over and you don't see it right away and your animal nibbles on it a little bit, it's not one that you automatically have to rush out to the veterinarian office. Give your vet a call, let them know what they ate, how much they ate, and what type of symptoms you're seeing. But it's not one that's so highly toxic that it's an immediate emergency. So you have time to call.
I was thinking, the white milky substance, of poinsettias when their branches break, and I'm like, ooh.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right on track. That is the substance that is toxic. Again, they would have to really be chewing on the plant and really ingesting a lot of that plant material to really have bad effects. So,
Now, is everything the same for cats and dogs?
no. So example lilies, like I've been explaining, are toxic to cats. The Easter lily, not the Peruvian, but they are not toxic to dogs. So if you only have dogs in the household, you can have Easter lilies and not be too concerned. There are different things like lily of the valley, which are very dangerous to dogs, but not as dangerous to cats. So it really varies by species. The nice thing about the ASPCA Poison Control website is they do break it down. So they do break it down if a plant is toxic to cats, if it's toxic to dog, and they actually list if it's toxic to horses as well. So that's the third species they go into. But yeah, I would always recommend, especially going to that website, if you just Google online whether a plant is toxic or not, you're going to get lots of conflicting information. And we always refer people to that hotline, to that website, because they really have a full team of staff that's what they do. They look into cases, and that's where they've really developed their data. So most veterinary offices, that's the hotline and website that they'll refer people to when it's any kind of question about plant toxicity.
One thing I was thinking about when we were discussing having this show was talking about a bit about like plants and kittens.
Yep.
I tend to believe they would get themselves into more trouble than an adult cat.
Yep.
Do we have to baby-proof our plants even more so than what we're doing now? I know you've made a few suggestions already in the show, but maybe some other thoughts with regards to kittens and what we have to worry about.
So I know, especially in my household, when my cats were young, the one issue I had with them around plants was digging at the dirt. So even though the plants were safe, they loved to dig at the dirt, pull the plants out, make a mess that way. And there's definitely ways that you can even cat-proof your plants more than just having non-toxic plants. One of my favorite tricks is if you have a plant that's not really covering all of the dirt like this one is here, but one that is stemmy and you have a lot of dirt exposed, you can definitely cover that dirt with something that is safe. If you get large rocks that it's too big for the cat to try to swallow, you can cover the dirt with that. One of the things I really like is you can get aluminum screening, just like how you would cat-proof your window screens so the cat can't scratch them open.
Oh.
You can actually cut them to the top of the size of your containers, put that right on top of the dirt, especially if you're buying the black ones, they blend right in. But that prevents the cats or the dogs from really digging at that dirt. I like to put a little bit of duct tape or a thicker tape around the edge so you don't have to worry about those little pieces of metal around the edge. But that works really well to kind of even pet-proof your planting containers even more so than just buy non-toxic plants.
I would assume that if a cat, say you had a really large pot and a cat went in there and actually used it as their litter box, that probably wouldn't be very healthy for the plant.
No, but again, that screen, putting the aluminum screen, they don't like the feel of that on their feet. They're less likely to use the plant as a litter box if you do something like that.
Excellent, excellent. So in terms of cat grass, should we also be growing catnip in our house? Or, should we have like our own indoor cat garden? I mean, we have these, I see these things on TV, where you can grow your own like lettuce and your hydroponic, got the lamps going and everything.
Yep.
Should we do this for our cats too?
My cat really likes it. I know I have one cat who totally ignores the plants. She likes to sit by them, but other than that, she really doesn't care. The other cat that I have, the younger cat, Wren, the minute I bring any new plant, she immediately just sticks her head in there and sits there for about 20 minutes just sniffing it. And then a lot of times she'll sit there and bat at it. She picks the flowers off and runs around the house with them. Luckily, I don't care too much. But yeah, she really enjoys having plants, and I think it gives her some extra enrichment.
So she'd stick her head right in there?
Yep, she sticks her. I have a picture of her doing that, actually. It's quite amusing. She would just lay her nose right inside and just literally almost fall asleep because she really enjoys having plants so much. The other thing she really likes are mini roses. So I do often have mini roses in the house, and I can catch her kind of picking off the roses as they start to dry out a little bit, and I'll find them in different areas of the house as she bats them around like they're a cat toy. So she loves having plants. I do like when I can get...
This is a mini roses.
Yeah, so you can see the one thing, I love mini roses with cats. The reason being is they are completely non-toxic, so every part of them is non-toxic. The one thing you have to be careful with roses, though, in general, is cats can get mechanical injuries from the roses, from the thorns. So the nice thing with mini roses is their thorns are really, really tiny. If your cat's really chewing on these, or if, let's say, you've forgotten to water your mini rose for a little bit and it's pretty dried out and stemmy, you can just go by and just pick off those little thorns to really get rid of that as well. I know my cat usually just goes after the leaves and the flowers, so I don't worry too much about the tiny, tiny thorns. Any full-size rose that you're getting, any cut rose, you definitely do want to take off the thorns. They're safe to have around cats. They are completely non-toxic, but it's those thorns that you would have to worry about. They can cause little cuts around the mouth. They really go after them. But yeah, they are a great plant to have inside. Another thing I like to plant, this is an example of catgrass. And catgrass, there really isn't a species called catgrass. So keep that in mind. That's a common name. Catgrass is actually a mixture of ryegrass, oatgrass, and sometimes wheatgrass. So it's a bunch of different grasses that they mix together. Sometimes you can buy just ryegrass and they call it catgrass. But again, that's a common name, so we've referred to it as that. So you want to look up the scientific name, and all of those grasses are safe to have around cats.
In this case, this is healthy grass and long,
It's a little long.
Long grass.
You can trim it.
But if I buy cat grass, it doesn't last in terms of the volume of.
So these self-watering pots, like the one I have there, work wonders for that. So whenever I plant any type of grass in those, that just having that water reservoir down below really keeps the grass very healthy, to the point where a lot of times at home I'm cutting this down with scissors a couple of times a week. You can, what some people do, especially if you're planting containers that you want the cat to actually have a little patch of outdoors. So a lot of people use litter boxes. So you can take an old or new litter box, put some stones at the bottom of it, put some soil, and then sprinkle cat grass or any type of the grass seeds, the oatgrass or the ryegrass.
You have a picture of this?
I do, and I know that we'll attach it to this presentation, but they're great to have just a little indoor garden for your cat. Put it in a windowsill. A lot of times your cat will lay down in it, sleep in it. What I do to even entice my cats more to that type of setup is I put fresh herbs around the outside. My cat loves to nibble on African violets, another plant that's safe to have around cats. So sometimes I'll plant those randomly in that patch of cat grass. Or even just plant some purple sage is a fun one. Some cilantro is another one that cats really seem to like, basil, and those are all completely safe to have around cats.
You have a picture of the litter box system?
We do, yes, and they'll show it online, but basically they do really love to kind of lay in the box and hang out in the sun. It is a really fun thing, and it's easy and cheap, so you can get a package of cat grass. Home Depot carries it, Lowe's carries it, any of those places will carry it, any garden center. And usually what I do is get a few, because once the grass gets really long or if the cat mats it down, you can just re-sprinkle seed on there and start over again. So it's really cheap and easy way to have an indoor garden for your cats.
At Lowe's and Home Depot, you cat grass is available.
Yeah, any of those. Yeah, I've even seen it at some of at grocery stores as well. So even this morning, I stopped at a grocery store on my way to work, and I saw cat grass in their seeds. So it's something that's really easy to find. But you don't have to. Cat grass and things like that aren't the only thing that you can have in a cat garden. So cilantro, you know, like I said, the sage, the basil, African violets. Those are all fun things to have as well. And it gives
But you're not putting catnip in there.
So catnip, and I did bring an example.
Catnip there?
This is catnip here. So I don't have catnip plants in my household. The reason being is catnip actually, if you were to look up catnip on the poison control website, it is listed as toxic. It is a mildly toxic plant, and it really depends on the cat. So some cats don't get any effect from catnip. Other cats, other cats, they eat it and they go absolutely nutty.
I have one of those.
And that's the example of one of mine. The good news about it is, you know, while catnip is listed as a toxic plant, you can also see on the ASPCA website, they do list it as something that is okay to have around cats. You just want to keep in mind that the reason it's listed as toxic is because of the symptoms some cats will have. And that will be, some will be really kind of out of their mind. They can either get really hyper and hurt themselves that way. It'd be very hard for them to actually get catnip poisoning. They would have to eat a ton of catnip, fresh catnip, for that to happen, because it's a chemical inside the leaves and stems that when they chew on it is released, and that's what affects them. And it's only probably about 15% of cats are affected by catnip, if I remember right. So it's something that, you know, I wouldn't be overly concerned about having catnip, but just keep in mind it is something that you don't want to have them eat a ton of. So if you are growing catnip at home, I'd recommend growing it in a container, not in a huge one, but something that you can put out for short periods of time and then take away. Typically, the symptoms a cat's going to show when they're ingesting catnip is going to be really short-lived, so just a few minutes to an hour, and then they're going to be back to normal. So you just don't want to leave it out for long periods of time and let them have that recovery period.
My plant doesn't last that long.
Yeah. Do they devour it right away?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have multiple cats.
Isn't mint also in the catnip family?
Yep,
too?
absolutely, yeah. Mint is one that's in the catnip family. There's lots of different types of mint. Again, I don't put mint in my gardens, in the cat gardens that I have inside, just for that fact that I tend to leave my gardens out and not move them away. So the cats always have access, especially my little cat who likes to chew and just kind of stick her head in the plants. I don't want to leave those out for that long. So I actually prefer just to get the little dry catnip and put it out randomly there instead of having the fresh plants.
Have it monitored.
Do cats like mint?
So mint, again, is one that's listed as toxic for the same reason, for the chemical that's released in the plant stems and leaves. So I wouldn't recommend having other types of mint besides catnip, and having catnip out in small quantities.
So I'm going to take one step further before we go to fully outdoors and the big wide world of outdoors and gardens and that kind of thing. What about catios? What are catios? How are they used? What do we put in our catios?
So catios are wonderful. They're a way to really give your cat a taste of the outdoors in a safe environment. So shelters, rescues are beginning to have them at their shelter. Individuals are having all different types of catios. There's actually catio tours you can go on. But really they're a screened-in area. They could be a 3-season porch that you really convert to a cat playground. It's somewhere safe that the cats can get, experience the outdoors in a safe, enclosed environment. Plants are great to have in your catios. So you can, get all kinds of plants and get them on different levels. Hanging spider plants would be wonderful on a catio, just because those, as they kind of shoot off those little stems, those can be cat toys, and they are completely safe to have around cats. But having a variety of different, areas with cat grass, having different herbs, having succulents, a lot of succulents are safe to have around cats. Giving them a variety will really give them that taste of the outdoors, but in a safe way.
Succulents in terms of aloe vera?
Aloe?
Aloe vera.
Aloe is one you have to be a little bit more cautious about. Okay. But a lot of the kind of really mainstream succulents, the ones that are trendy now, like the chicken and hens. That is non-toxic. A lot of those smaller succulents. The hard thing about succulents, though, is when you go to buy them at a store or at a garden center, a lot of them just say assorted succulents. You don't want to buy plants like that when you're thinking in terms of pet safety, because like I said, you always want to look up the common and scientific name. And if you don't know exactly what that plant is, you can't tell for sure if it's something that is considered to be non-toxic. So I would avoid any that just say, unless you're really good at identifying plants yourself, I would avoid those assorted mixed plants because you really just don't know what you're getting.
And the catios are great because you can offer a lot of scratching opportunities to, vertical and horizontal scratching, and it's a way for you to be able to be outside with your cat and not necessarily have to worry about the struggles of being an outdoor kitty,
Yes, absolutely.
and that kind of thing. So you have some quality time with your cat, outside. I think catio tours are great. I would hope at some point in time, maybe in Boston or Chelsea, we end up with a catio tour. They're great fundraisers for organizations too, so it would be a lot of fun to have a catio tour. So if you do have a catio and you're in Chelsea or in the greater Boston area and would like to put your catio on tour, just reach out to us. We'd be thrilled to put together a tour.
Yeah, and even just to see, if you're doing indoor gardening in a catio, it's a wonderful place to do it because of the sunlight, the fresh air. But getting pictures of catios with that, plant life incorporated would be wonderful as well, just to get creative and see what you can do out there.
So as we are approaching summertime too, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about our outdoor gardens, and it's great and wonderful to talk about having, a cat garden outside in your backyard. There are a range of folks who, don't want community cats in their yards. And then there are a range of folks who would like to encourage cats to use certain sections of their gardens. So, how do you address some of those issues?
I think the biggest thing, especially if you do have a lot of community cats and you're growing gardens outside, is to be aware of what you're planting, safety-wise. There are a lot of plants outside even that can be potentially dangerous. The good news is, plants outside, most cats will avoid. They're not going to be treating on every plant outside because there's a lot more variety. But if you're really trying to encourage those cats to come and hang out in your garden, planting things like the different types of grasses, the different textures, the roses, the things like that they can. The herb gardens, there's a lot of really safe herbs to have around cats. And bringing that element kind of into the garden would be fun. And putting toys out there too. I can think of a lot of times you get the windmills and the things like that. Any of those toys can be looked at as big, large cat toys. So, not only can you add the plants, but you can add other elements as well to really entice the animals to come to your garden.
Windmills in the sense of child's windmills. Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Or the pinwheel things too that folks put in. And then if you get a call about somebody saying that there's cats in my yard and I don't want them there, what sort of recommendation do you give them?
There's lots of ways you could potentially screen the cats out of it, kind of putting larger plants along the outside, things that are low going. Cats are typically either climbers or ground dwellers. I've learned I have one of both in my household. But trying to just block off areas so your cats aren't necessarily going in them. Also looking at why they're going into the garden. Are they going into the garden because there's a lot of other animals in there and they're actually going to explore? So there's lots of different things that you can think of. And just, having raised garden beds, things like that can also be helpful. And finding ways to cover your plants that are especially sensitive to animals nibbling on them. It's kind of the same way you do with any outdoor wildlife if you're trying to protect it from a garden.
What about like citrusy type things? Are there sprays or anything like that you can use?
There are sprays. There's always the bitter sprays that you can use. They don't last as long if you're using them in an outdoor environment because obviously they get washed off. And one thing to keep in mind with those type of sprays is some animals like them. So while most don't, especially the citrus with cats, you will get occasionally that one cat that really likes the taste. I learned through kind of trial and error that my dog really likes some of those bitter apple sprays that we would use. So I sprayed it all over my windowsills when I had my dog out there, and I came home and they were all chewed. So again, you got to know your animals. You got to see what works and kind of trial and error to figure out what works for you in your garden.
And there are also motion sensor like sprayers and those kinds of things. I'm not sure how well those work, but that's been a tip that I've read before.
Yeah, there's definitely one that I could see working pretty well in cats would probably be the motion sensing sprinklers. So you can use those with any type of wildlife or cats that are in the area. But basically, they just, if an animal comes into that area, it'll just shoot off a couple of sprays of water and then stop. So they are pretty cheap to find. I think they're only about $30. You can use those, and they do seem to be effective.
And one of the most important things to make sure is that the community cats are sterilized, that they have the ear tip, because if you have an unneutered male cat, they're just going to naturally want to go around and mark everybody's territory.
Absolutely.
So the best thing that we could all ensure is that the cats are spayed or neutered out there, because they're going to be much less interested in marking their territory.
Yes.
And stinking up the neighborhood.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's very important.
Yeah, yeah. So if any folks out there do see cats in their backyard that do not have an ear tip and they need to be spayed or neutered, you can just reach out to us at 857-776-2287, just as a reminder to folks that we're here to help the cats that are wandering around the community and get them all spayed and neutered. So we've covered catios. We've talked about gardens outside. Are there any other plant issues that the things that I still worry about, or somebody gives me some nice flowers, carnations, roses, you name it, daffodils. We're in springtime. Daffodils, tulips. I don't have a bird cage to put my flowers in. I just have to stick at the way top of my cabinets with my ladder, and then I look at them up there to keep them away from my cats. Is that the only thing that we can do is basically protect?
There's a lot of florists now. I know I've been doing this Pet Safe Plant Talk a couple of years now, and you'd be surprised on how many florists actually keep a pet safe list. So you can encourage people to, especially if you are giving flowers to someone you know that has pets, to make sure you're asking the florist which plants are safe to have around plants or around pets. And a lot of times they will be very accommodating for that. Even some of the large online florists where you can buy plants from that way, I have noticed I've been started seeing Pet Safe kind of logos on there as well. So you can find those in even some of the big suppliers. But it's always a good idea whenever you're getting any type of plant as a gift. So if someone gives you a plant, again, check that scientific name on that site and see if it's one that's safe to have out. So do that as soon as you bring it into the house. And if it is one that's toxic to your animals, put it out of reach or give it to someone else. That's another safe thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
And also there's the plant food that you put in the water, which now I'm thinking is probably not the healthiest.
Yeah, I never use the plant food. I think it's better just to make sure you're doing fresh water changes daily with any cut flowers. Anytime you're adding a chemical to a plant, there is a potential hazard there. So depending on what type of chemicals and preservatives they use, it's safer to avoid it.
So, and then just bouncing back outside for a quick minute, a lot of people use like Roundup or like the, weed killers in the yards, and that's not great, right?
Yeah, and that's another reason if you're giving your cat an area with grass in it, you never want to bring in your grass from outside. So that's why you always want to grow it from seed or get the grass from a garden center. Don't just grab grass from your backyard thinking it's safe to put indoors. Because it's probably sprayed with chemicals. And even if you don't spray with chemicals, there can be runoff from your neighbor's chemicals on there. So once you bring it inside, your cat is more likely to just sit there and chew on it for a while. So make sure you have safe grass as well.
So, and if a cat has the poisoning, you said call poison control right away. And Or, I mean, but how would we know that it was caused by a plant if we didn't happen to witness them actually eating a plant? Are they just throwing up all the time, not able to keep food down? I mean, how do we identify that that's the issue rather than thinking it's, you know, a whole range of other issues?
It's tough, and a lot of times what's going to happen if your animal is showing any signs of poisoning, signs of poisoning can be, you know, that they're really lethargic, that they're foaming around their mouth a little bit, that their drool is really sticky and stringy, that their eyes are really dilated, so, or they seem to have a really increased heart rate. Those are all signs that they could have potentially ingested something. And what I'd say, if you're seeing any of those symptoms, your first call should be your local vet. If your vet office is not open and can't assist you right away, don't wait. There is that poison control hotline that's open 24 hours a day, so right on the ASPCA site. Call that one. There is a fee associated with that, but they can let you know if you need to bring your animal to an emergency center right away. And always look around. If you are calling one of those, let them know if there's a potential hazard. So let them know if you did just bring up a new plant home or what plants you have in the household. If the animal's vomiting or has diarrhea, do you try to take a little look at it and see if you do see plant material? Because that can be another indicator.
So it means we have to look at everything that our cats throw up.
Yeah, pretty much.
Hairballs, excess cat food.
Yeah.
The list goes on.
I mean, cats are notorious. Well, dogs also, both of them tend to throw up a fair amount usually, but they
Yep.
chew on, because dogs, I would think it would be even harder because they're always like chewing on sticks and things like that too.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I can not even imagine like the thought of a dog not like chewing on some sort of a branch at most times. So I
Yeah.
would think that would be really hard. Are there, for the dog folks, are there things that they're not supposed to have their dogs chew on in terms of the sticks and that kind of stuff?
I mean, anytime dogs are chewing up sticks and swallowing them, there are potential mechanical dangers. So they can get the stick lodged. I actually, from personal experience, one of my dogs, I planted a new tree in the background, in our backyard. And over the winter, the tree was the only thing above the snow line. So what I didn't realize, my dog was going out there and chewing on the tree and really just chewing off branches of the tree. A couple days later, I started to smell that his breath had gotten really bad. I couldn't see anything. He was eating, acting normal, not pawing at his mouth. But just kind of on a hunch, I opened his mouth and I saw he had a stick wedged through the roof of his mouth. I immediately took him to an emergency room and they were able to remove it without any lasting effects. But you do want to be really cautious of that. In that case, my dog had no symptoms of poisoning, had no symptoms of even an injury. The only sign that I was able to tell is because of this additional smell coming out of his mouth. So,
Very
but yeah,
perceptive
you do want to
of
be,
you, because
yeah.
I mean, dog breath is
Yeah.
dog breath.
Well, it was a little different than his normal dog breath. So there was something in that, and sure enough, there was a stick. It was right through the roof of his mouth. And some animals are stoic. If they have an injury, they're not necessarily going to show signs of pain. But you have to really pay attention to your animals and figure out what's the norm to figure out when they are in distress. And that's what happened then.
So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here because I also know you have experience with animals other than cats and dogs.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about rabbits and guinea pigs.
Yeah.
Is there anything we need to know about plants and if you are an owner of smaller animals, rabbits or guinea pigs?
So rabbits and guinea pigs have a really sensitive GI tract. However, they are animals that are constantly foraging. So they will try to nibble on almost anything that they're near them that they can. When looking at bringing your rabbit outdoors, or I have a rabbit, he's 11 and a half now, so I've had him for a really long time. He's free range in my household, right along with my cats and dogs. And I do occasionally bring him outside with me when I'm in the yard, but I have to be really careful on what plants are outside when I do that. What I actually did to give him a space where he can hang out in the yard with us is I planted clover. Grass doesn't grow very well in my house because I used to have pine trees in the yard. But clover grows amazingly. And so my ground cover for my backyard is actually clover, which is perfectly safe for the rabbit to nibble on. So you can get creative with it. My rabbit also likes if I do little kind of patches of clover and bring them in so he can sit on it. They don't last as long as the cat grass because he will completely eat it. But it is a good idea to kind of research and see what plants they can have. Typically with rabbits and guinea pigs, a lot of the different types of like romaine lettuce, the herbs, they really, especially like things like cilantro, basil, sage, things like that, they'll really go after. So similar to the cats. I don't necessarily let them chew on things like the mini roses because of the thorns, and they're much smaller, and it would be much more of a hazard to them. But a lot of the similar things, as long as it's, you can look up to see if it's toxic for them as well. So.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So are there any other, do we have any other plant questions for Sherry before we go into sort of our update and announcements of what's been going on in Chelsea?
I think she's got the bases covered.
What sort of questions do the plant ladies ask you?
So when I do the garden shows, a lot of it is really how to get started and what things, basically what I always tell them is if you're going to start doing indoor gardening with pets, you have to decide, are you doing a garden for the pet or are you doing a garden for you? So that's the first consideration before you even start looking into what type of display you're going to have, what type of pot. If it's a garden for your pets, then you really want to think of things that are safe for them to chew and they can really immerse themselves in. So making that little type of setting where they have a patch of the outdoors. If it's a garden for you, then how can you kind of pet-proof it so it lasts longer? So being creative and using old bird cages, terrariums, things like that. Even if you're putting non-toxic plants, if you want to keep your garden nice, that might be a better option for you as well.
Very interesting. So we're just going to cover for a few minutes some announcements from Hubcats Chelsea. On May 6th, we're going to have a vaccination and microchipping clinic at Volk Park from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And in addition to that, we are continuing to offer free spay-neuter for cats and dogs via the MSPCA. We'll have that information up. The vaccination and microchipping clinic is free, and it is for cats and dogs. Cats need to be in carriers, dogs need to be leashed, so that Sherry's job, Sherry, who volunteers at those clinics all the time, will be a lot easier. She's a dynamo. You work in the cat tent, is that correct?
Yes. So I'm frequently a cat handler for the vets.
You're the cat handler. And I think at the last one, she handled like 100 cats or so.
Yep. Yes,
And,
so I hope you bring your pets.
Yes, so bring them on down and get them all vaccinated and microchipped. It's free for any resident in Chelsea. And we were also thrilled to get a $1,500 donation from the Petco Foundation to help support our work here in Chelsea for cats and dogs. So we can always use volunteers. We need help with fundraising and trapping. Laura and Sherry attend our meetings that we have on a monthly basis. We tend to be now meeting on the second Tuesday of every month, but feel free to check us out on Facebook. Send us a message. We'll get you on the email list. We invite folks to every meeting, and it's open to the public.
Stacy, in addition, we need help trapping, but it's not common knowledge for many people. We'll provide instructions.
Yep, we would help. Yep, anyone who's interested in helping trapping cats in their backyard, and we will pay for the surgeries. We'll coach you through the whole process. We're looking, again, I always say we're looking for volunteers for fundraising because that is a hot topic for us. And donations of food, carriers, cages, obviously money, linens. We've had linens on the list recently. Can you think of anything else, Laura, of things that we've been, the wish list items that we've been talking about?
Money. No,
Money, yes, money still is on the list. Folks that can write to help us with our grant applications and to help with our outreach. So if you have, a skill that you want to share, you want to work with us, please reach out. Flyering in the community, putting up flyers, outreach. If you're on a committee that's willing to share information about our work, that's also great. For those of you who don't know, we've assisted over 1,200 cats and dogs since we started. And so that's a pretty amazing number, I think, specific to Chelsea. So 1,200 in a couple of years is really, really great. And in June, we'll have our 2nd year anniversary. Laura, do you have any closing thoughts, anything that we want to share with the folks out there in Chelsea?
I think you covered it all. You know, the May 6th is a popular a clinic. So.
And if you watch this and it's after May 6th, no worries. We're going to have another clinic in October. So just keep a lookout on our Facebook page at Hubcats Chelsea or our website, hubcatschelsea.com. And we have all the information there about when our upcoming vaccination and microchip clinics are. So don't be shy. Feel free to check in with us at any time. We're here to help the animals in Chelsea. Sherry, any last thoughts from you?
No, I think we covered everything. If people do want to find out more about pet safety with plans, they can always visit the Mass Animal Fund website. We do have a pet safety page there, so where it not only talks around about plants and has a pocket list that you can bring to your garden center of some safe plants, but it also goes into safety around the holidays and things more general like that.
That's great. And the Mass Animal Fund website has great resources for other things too. So if there's a stray cat in your backyard and you're uncertain as to determine whether the cat's abandoned, lost, you know, just enjoying the food that you might be putting out on the back porch, but really is owned, there's a great flow chart on the Mass Animal Fund website talking about how to handle or to determine whether this cat is lost or just happens to be, you know, cruising the neighborhood, I guess.
Yeah, our found a cat flow chart is right on our pet safety page. So it's, again, another resource that we try to get out there. So definitely visit the page and check it out.
Excellent. Well, Sherry, it's been great catching up with you today. And I just want to thank you. I didn't even know, I mean, how many years have I known you? And I had no idea you had like this plant lady background. So I learned something new about you every day. So that's great. So I appreciate you very much bringing the plants, sharing with us today all of this fantastic information. I've learned a lot. I'm sure Laura's learned a lot. We're going to go out and start growing our grass and getting the right grass.
I'm excited about the cat grass litter box.
Cat grass litter
They will
box.
like it.
I think it's a great idea. Laura, of course, thank you so much for helping making this program happen, for joining us today, being my partner in crime. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And for folks, just a reminder again, to donate to Hubcats Chelsea, please, or to volunteer, please go to www.hubcatschelsea.com, and you can find us on Facebook. Please join our team and help make a difference for cats and dogs in Chelsea. We really, really need the help. Our phone number is 857-776-2287. Our email is hubcatschelsea@gmail.com. And thank you so much for tuning in today. We'll see you next time. And remember, there'll be no cat or dog left behind in Chelsea.